Welcome back to Kleppers Corner, where history isn't just a bunch of dusty dates. It's the original reality show. September 26th is basically history's way of saying, you thought yesterday was normal? Strap in. This date has given us political makeovers, pirate treasure, cosmic revelations, and one guy literally saving the entire planet by saying, maybe let's not push the red button. So let's dig in, because today in history is one of those days where you look back and think, wow, humanity survived this long by accident. Segment 1, Kennedy versus Nixon, the debate that made politics sexy. September 26, 1960, the day American politics discovered television wasn't just for cowboy shows and toothpaste ads. Kennedy and Nixon went head-to-head in the first televised presidential debate. And the results? Basically the difference between Brad Pitt and your pale, sweaty uncle explaining lawn care at Thanksgiving. Kennedy shows up tan, rested, and wearing a dark suit that made him pop like a Hollywood star. Nixon? Well, Nixon decided to cosplay as a sickly accountant. He refused makeup, wore a gray suit that blended into the backdrop, and looked like a guy who lost a fight with a bottle of Pepto-Bismol. Viewers at home said Kennedy looked confident, while Nixon looked like he was melting into the furniture. Here's the kicker. Radio listeners thought Nixon actually won, which proves that politics is less about what you say and more about whether people think you'd survive in an Instagram filter. This was the moment when charisma officially became more important than policy. Forget nuclear deterrents. Can you look good under studio lights? This debate gave birth to our modern nightmare, the politics of optics. Suddenly, leaders weren't just politicians, they were performers. From that moment on, every campaign has been a cross between a policy seminar and an audition for The Bachelor. Segment 2, Francis Drake, the pirate who balanced England's checkbook. Back in 1580, Sir Francis Drake returned to England after becoming the first Englishman to sail around the world. And he didn't just come home with postcards. He came home with enough stolen Spanish treasure to pay off England's national debt. That's right, Drake basically turned piracy into a stimulus package. Queen Elizabeth had secretly bankrolled Drake's voyage, which was less exploration and more state-sponsored mugging. Spain thought the Pacific was theirs, but Drake rolled in like a guy saying, nice empire you've got here. Shame if someone pirated it. He raided ports, looted ships, and then sailed back with so much gold that Elizabeth literally knighted him on his stolen boat. Talk about sending a message. Spain was furious, demanding Elizabeth hang him as a pirate. Instead, she basically said, hang him? No, he's my new bestie. This is like if Jeff Bezos robbed Walmart blind and Biden responded by giving him the Medal of Freedom. Drake's success turned England into a global power player. His circumnavigation wasn't just about maps. It was about swagger. Spain had the Armada, but England had Drake and the beginnings of an empire. And all it took was piracy, murder, and the guts to say, finders keepers, losers weepers. Segment 3, Einstein, breaking the universe with a pencil. Fast forward to September 26, 1905, and Albert Einstein drops a paper that blows up everything we thought we knew about time, space, and reality. Before Einstein, physics was about apples falling on heads and trains running on time. After Einstein, suddenly, time slows down if you move fast enough. Space bends like a yoga instructor, and your grandma's fruitcake technically has enough energy to power a small city. Special relativity told us that the universe isn't absolute, it's relative, which is a fancy way of saying that thing you thought was true, only true if you're standing still. His most famous equation, E equals mc squared, showed that mass and energy are basically interchangeable. That's great if you're trying to understand stars. It's terrifying if you're trying to build a bomb. And let's be honest, Einstein didn't look like a guy who'd rewrite reality. He looked like a man who just discovered static electricity by licking a light socket. Yet, from his little patent office desk, he dismantled Newton's universe and replaced it with something so weird that even sci-fi writers were like, tone it down, man. Without Einstein, no nuclear power, no GPS, no time dilation memes. Without him, the only relativity we'd talk about would be, do I really want to spend Thanksgiving with my relatives? Segment 4, the man who saved the world by doing nothing. September 26, 1983, a night when one guy's skepticism kept us all alive. Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov was sitting in a bunker when the computer started screaming, "Incoming U.S. missiles." Protocol was simple: report it and boom, nuclear war. But Petrov looked at the data and thought, 5 missiles? That's not a first strike, that's a prank. So instead of following orders, he told his bosses the system was glitching. And thank God, because it was. Turns out sunlight bouncing off clouds had fooled Soviet satellites. If Petrov had panicked, we'd be living in Fallout 5 right now. Here's the wild part. He wasn't hailed as your hero. Nope. He got reprimanded for filing paperwork wrong. Paperwork. The man single-handedly prevented World War III, and his boss said, "Yeah, but your TPS report was sloppy." Petrov's story is a reminder that sometimes the bravest act is simply refusing to hit send. He saved the world by doing what we all do when we get a sketchy email: delete. Segment 5, bonus round, the rest of September 26th. This date isn't done flexing. On September 26th, 1777, the British occupied Philadelphia, forcing Congress to move to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's right, our capital was once a one-day Airbnb rental. In 1789, George Washington appointed Thomas Jefferson as the first Secretary of State. Imagine that first day. Congrats, Tom. Your job is to invent American diplomacy. No pressure. Culturally, we got the premiere of West Side Story in 1957, a musical where teenagers sing, dance, and stab each other. Proof that America has always loved chaos with choreography. And on TV, the Beverly Hillbillies premiered in 1962, while the Brady Bunch debuted in 1969. One show was about country bumpkins striking oil, the other about a blended family striking awkward dialogue. And of course, birthdays. Serena Williams, arguably the greatest tennis player of all time, was born today. So was George Gershwin, who basically invented the soundtrack of America. And T.S. Eliot, who wrote poetry so bleak it makes Radiohead sound like Kids Bop. Meanwhile, Johnny Appleseed was born in 1774, which means every time you bite into a Red Delicious, you're tasting a folk hero's legacy. On the death side, we lost Daniel Boone, Levi Strauss, Bessie Smith, Bella Bartok, and Paul Newman, which means that today is the one day in history where jeans, jazz, classical music, and salad dressing all went into mourning. In conclusion, so that's September 26th, the day debates turned into fashion shows, piracy turned into empire, physics turned into fever dreams, and one man stopped the apocalypse by ignoring bad code. It's a reminder that history isn't just about grand designs. It's about weird moments, lucky guesses, and whether you look good on camera. And as Kennedy, Drake, Einstein, and Petrov all proved, sometimes the future turns on charisma, greed, genius, or just plain stubborn common sense.